Hello future adventurers, welcome to the Den of Alacrity. Do something for me. Imagine you're walking through the woods. The morning sun is just beginning to banish the night's frost. Bird songs fill the air alongside the smell of fresh spring flowers. You glance back at your wagon and you spot the old man and his granddaughter that you've been charged to protect as they make their way through these woods. A twig snaps ahead of you, drawing your attention forward as a sense of panic builds in your chest. And then you see it, a wolf. A pack of wolves, 3 to be precise, make their way out of the woods. As soon as you catch the lead wolf's eye, the pack moves to attack. You look at your sword, on your belt as it always is, and then you spot a tree to your left that might hide your escape. The little girl screams as her grandfather moves to protect her. What would you do? Seriously, leave a comment down below telling me what you would do. Go with your gut, put yourself in the shoes of that guard and write the first thing that comes to mind. Or, if it makes it easier, think about the bravest version of yourself and how they would handle that situation. Or maybe the most self-serving version of you. What would they do? What we've just done there is play Dungeons and Dragons. Well, technically it could be any tabletop role-playing game, commonly referred to as TTRPGs, the first acronym of many. Be prepared. There are loads of different rule sets for this type of game, and D&D is just one of them, albeit the most popular one. Dungeons & Dragons was invented in 1974 by Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson. It's been around a long time, so it can be hard to separate the truth about D&D from the fiction and parody we're so used to seeing on TV. In this video, and in the rest of this series, I'm going to show you what an actual game of D&D looks like, so that you can see it's a game for anyone with an imagination and a sense of adventure. That means you. Like any good adventure, there is treasure or loot at the end of this video, so make sure you stick around to get your hands on some essential D&D tools. I'm not going to go into the history of the game in this video. If you're interested in that kind of thing, I've left 2 links in the description down below. There's a shorter video by The Verge that covers all the basics for you, or a slightly longer and more in-depth video by Dungeon Craft. They're both amazing, so you should definitely check them out if you want to learn how the game came to be. There have been a bunch of changes to the game since its initial inception, and the version most commonly played nowadays is called D&D 5th edition, or D&D 5e for short. At its core, it is a game where you and a group of people get together and play the role of adventurers, rolling dice and improvising dialogue. Learning D&D can be quite challenging for newcomers, or as someone who hasn't played the game in a while. I know this because I first learned to play D&D when I was 14, and I remember it taking a while to sink in. I played a bunch in my teens and then put it down and didn't play for a long while, until about 3 years ago when me and my friends picked up 5th edition and decided to learn how to play. Since then, I've introduced quite a few new people to the game, including my partner Abby, who now runs a game for us every 2 weeks. I want to fast track you all into becoming competent adventurers ready to face any obstacles. First, let's look back over the encounter I presented at the start of this video. In that moment, I was playing the role of the Dungeon Master, or DM for short. I set the scene for you, getting the story started. I told you where you were, what you could see, hear and smell, and I even told you why you were there, to guard the wagon. Then I presented an obstacle, and set the stage for the real game to begin, how you would react to the scenario. This is something key that you should remember. D&D is all about building a story together, called collaborative storytelling, and your ideas and actions are just as important as the ones described by the Dungeon Master. If you're in doubt, take the pieces of the story that the Dungeon Master has presented and try to do something with them. Once you get a bit more experience, you'll be able to come up with stuff on the fly. If you didn't leave a comment before, how about leaving one now that you know a little bit more about the information I presented to you? D&D is all about thinking on your feet, so just dive in. What does the real game look like? Well, you and the other players would each tell me what you'd like to do. You can coordinate it as a group, or each react individually. I would then ask you to roll a dice to see how well your plans turn out. Dice. We'll talk about these more in a minute, but for the time being, I just want you to focus in on this one die, the D20. The D20 is your gateway into the world. If this were a video game, it would be your controller. If we were writing, it would be your pen or your keyboard. The rules of D&D all revolve around this one dice, and all the other dice will be mentioned explicitly if you need them. The higher your roll is, the better your plans turn out. Rolling a 20 is called a natural 20 and should be shouted like you just won at bingo. Going back to the wolves, say you wanted to attack them with your sword. I would ask you to make an attack roll with the D20. Maybe you'd like to run away. I would ask you to roll a stealth check to see how sneaky you are. You could even try reasoning with the wolves, trying to calm them down. I would ask you to roll to see how skilled you are at handling animals. All of these things are accounted for in the rules of D&D, and if there's not a specific option for the thing you want to do, often the DM will just make up a roll. All of the options that are built in are on your character sheet, which we're going to have a look at now. I'm going to show you how to make one of these in the next video, so make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it. But don't worry if you don't get what all of this means right now.
Here's a sheet for one of my characters called Bronny. He is a dwarf bard. Now I know this can look intimidating, but I reassure you you're only ever going to need 1 or 2 of these numbers, max, at any one time. This sheet details everything my character can possibly do, so that's why it looks like there's quite a lot on here. At the top here we have innate abilities. These are things that define my character, like how strong they are, how intelligent they are, and even how charismatic. These abilities then impact my skills, which are just down here. Now these are more specific talents and things that my character can do. This is usually what the DM will be asking me to roll for if I'm not in combat. These are things like their athletics, so feats of strength. You also have like medicine and religion, or perception, which is when you're looking out for things. Now over here we have my attacks. So these are things I can do in combat, such as use either of my rapiers, which is a sword. So this is what Bronny uses. Then we have spells, so I can cast these either in combat or out of combat to solve my problems. And then finally, we have our armor class and HP. Almost all of these numbers are just detailing what I would add to a D20. So you see here we've got +5s, +4s. Now, let's break down some of the jargon that's on this sheet so that you can understand it a bit better.
First, dice. Whenever you see D, always in lowercase, followed by a number, it's referring to one of these dice. The number is the amount of sides on the dice, and it's also the maximum number you can roll. There is even a way to roll a D100. Not an 100-sided dice, but rather 2 10-sided dice, one for 10s and one for singles. Next, there are some acronyms that really confused me when I first started. HP, health points. This is how healthy your character is. When you're attacked, you'll take damage. If this reaches 0, you're on your way to death. Should be familiar to any video gamers out there. AC, or armor class, is how difficult you are to hit. If an enemy is attacking you, they have to beat this on their roll in order to do damage. DC, or difficulty check, can be a roll that an opponent has to beat when you use a spell or another power on them, or it could be a number added to your D20 when you're trying to cast a spell at somebody or make an attack roll. NPC stands for non-player character, and this is any character in the game that the DM controls, just like the old man and his granddaughter. Each of the ability scores for a character is often abbreviated to these 3-letter versions. So if you see these around, that's what it's referring to. I know this is a lot of information to take in, so I've got something for you to do in order to help you learn. Here are your 2 next quests, adventurers. Number 1. The best way to learn D&D, besides playing, is to find yourself a real play podcast and listen to a lot of it. These are basically just podcasts that are recorded games of D&D, and they invite you along on their adventures. Some of mine and my friends' favourites are Not Another D&D Podcast, or NADPod. Critical Role is the most popular by far. Adventure Zone combines a funny cast for great engaging adventures. And Dimension 20 again has a great cast and offers really good video podcasts. Number 2 is to find a group to play with. If a friend sent you this video, you might already have this, but if not, maybe you could send it to your friends and you guys could start playing together. Then you'll need a DM. If one of your friends already plays D&D, they might like to step into the shoes of a DM. I'm going to have some videos coming out for them very soon, so make sure they're subscribed so they can watch those. Otherwise, you're going to have to check online for a group or a DM to lead the session. Facebook groups seems to be the best way to do this, or you can check Reddit on r/LFG. D&D Beyond also has a great forum for this. And you should check out your local game shop to see if they have any groups you could join.
I promised y'all some loot for sticking with me to the end of this video, and you've made it. I've created a toolkit that recaps everything I've been over in this video, including a dice guide and reiterating those acronyms. There's a PDF version like this, or a web version, so bookmark it and go download the PDF and you can keep it with you. You can even cut out this dice guide and stick it on the table with your dice on top so that you know which one is which. I also said I would give you highlight episodes of all of those podcasts that I've spoken about, and you can find those here, and links to all the places where you can find a D&D group online are on the right side over here. So yeah, let me know what you think. If there's anything you'd like me to add to this, just let me know. This is the first part of the toolkit, and as we go through, I'm going to be adding to it, and hopefully at the end you'll have a complete guide to getting started in D&D. You'll find the link to this in the description down below, so go check it out and share it with your friends as well.
That's where we'll end this session of D&D Learning. Thank you so much for joining me. Don't worry, the adventure is just beginning. In the next video, I'm going to show you how to create a character to take with you on your next adventure. We'll go through all the options for character creation, and I'll show you how to flesh out their personality a little bit to make in-game decisions a bit easier. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and that bell icon so you're notified when that video comes out. The world needs more D&D players, so if you know anyone with a big imagination and a sense of humour, why not send them this video so that you guys can start playing together? Until next time, my beautiful sleuth of internet bears, get ready for adventure.